Today on the Bandrew Says podcast, we're going to talk about Susan Wojcicki's 2019 YouTube goals, YouTube losing Google about $70 billion, Facebook banning a bunch of people, and a whole lot more, so go ahead and stick around. Greetings, Earthlings, and welcome back to episode 167 of the BSP. My name is Bandrew. This is what I says. Like always, down below there are timestamps of everything that I talk about in the show notes in case you want to skip around and save a few minutes. But if you got the time, I would appreciate you checking out the entire episode. If you do want a different version of the show, either audio or video, you can find that at bandrewsays.com. And you can also find other amazing podcasts at geeksrising.com. Let's start with YouTube news. The first thing I want to talk about is Susan Wojcicki's blog post that addressed creator feedback, and they updated their 2019 priorities. And she broke it into 3 different sections: living up to our responsibility, support creator and artist success, and improving communication and engagement. Let's go ahead and work through each of these, and then I will address how this affects you as a creator or how we can interpret this. So first up, we have living up to our responsibility, and this is in regards to the actions that YouTube took surrounding abuse of minors and extremist content. If you don't recall, a couple months ago, there were some pretty abusive comments that were time-stamping moments in videos where children were in exploitative positions, and that led to YouTube taking quite an extreme measure where they disabled comments on pretty much all videos that contained a minor in them. Then as far as the extremist videos, this came into play after the Christchurch and Sri Lankan attacks, where they ended up removing a lot of videos surrounding that idea. And because they were so extreme, no pun intended, in their removal of videos, that led to news stories getting lumped in together with extremist content, and some news videos were taken down. Now, I personally understand the need for the aggressive approaches in both of these instances because there's some harm that could be done there. But something that I think went woefully unaddressed in this entire portion of the blog post was YouTube's decision to prioritize reputable news sources, in particular, the instance with Brie Larson, where she said some stuff that made people angry, and people made videos criticizing her and asking others to boycott Captain Marvel. YouTube thought that this was a perfect time to roll out this feature where they can flip a switch and say, deprioritize regular creators, and let's push established news organizations to the top of the search results. I personally don't think that this was a justifiable change to the search results, mainly because it wasn't a breaking news story. I can somewhat understand prioritizing established news agencies who are actually on the ground during breaking news stories, but in regards to criticism of an actress or an actor or any public figure, I don't think that necessarily qualifies as a breaking news story. So I think that they should have addressed that decision, and I think they made a big mistake by neglecting to address that. I think a lot of people have lost a bit of faith in YouTube's search results because YouTube has shown that they are willing to and able to manipulate those results based on what they think the audience should be seeing. I think they should have addressed that, but they didn't. The second header is support creator and artist success. Susan talked about meeting with a bunch of creators, and they brought up a lot of concerns. The main concerns that she focuses on here are clarity around community guidelines and advertiser-friendly policies, so there's more predictability on monetization and the recommendation system, better representation for YouTube creators on the trending tab, frustration regarding copyright claims that are less than 10 seconds or incidental, and online harassment from fellow creators is growing and needs to be addressed. Let's go ahead and dive a little bit deeper into each of these separate categories and talk about how she thinks that YouTube is going to, or how YouTube is addressing these concerns. First, we have community guidelines and monetization. and YouTube plans to add more detail to policies so creators can make the best decisions on their content. And also, she brought up the self-certification pilot program, which allows creators to self-assess their content in the video to determine if it's advertiser-friendly. And lastly, she points out that they're continuing to make improvements on the accuracy of monetization classifiers, which she states since January have been improved by 25%. Not sure how they measure that, but they're saying 25%. Sure, let's go with that. Sounds good. Love to see some actual detailed analysis of how they're coming up with that. The second point is the representation on the trending tab. I'm sure all of you have seen so many late night talk show hosts on that thing, and it doesn't seem like it actually represents what's popular on the platform. Susan went ahead and said that this tab is intended to show content that a wide range of viewers would find interesting, so they're especially careful about the safety of those videos, and they ensure that they don't contain profanity or mature content. And YouTube plans to have 50% of the trending tab be made up of YouTube content creators' videos, so we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. The third one is manual copyright claim abuse, and Susan doesn't really address this much, but says they were already exploring improvements in striking the right balance between copyright owners and creators. So there's nothing interesting or important that we're able to pull out of that. And the last one is Article 13, which is now titled Article 17. Susan went ahead and pointed out that the main concern that YouTube has is the vague, untested requirements of the new directive, and it could create serious limitations for what YouTube creators can upload. This risks lowering the revenue to traditional media and music companies from YouTube and potentially devastating the many European creators who have built their business on YouTube. And I do want to point out that there is still 2 years for each of the EU member states to implement Article 13, so there will be different plans for each of the member states. The key takeaway that I get from this portion of the article, or from the blog post, is that she specifically states it could devastate European creators. What that tells me is that YouTube is not going to roll out some blanket upload filter across the entire globe to make it easy on themselves. It tells me that they are going to specifically focus in on Europe when developing these upload filters. So everybody outside of Europe, everybody outside the EU, sounds like you're going to be fine. But if you're in the EU, I am sorry, doesn't look good for you. They are planning to roll out these upload filters, it sounds like, because they kind of have to. It's going to be a regulation. It's going to be a law. They have to follow that. So it doesn't look good for European content creators unless you contact your member state representative government and say, hey, you shouldn't do this. You need to fix this. Here's what you should do. Here's what my concerns are, and voice your opinion. That's why they are there. That's why you have representatives to represent you, not the corporations. They're there to represent you as a citizen. So let your representatives know what you think should be done about Article 13 and what your concerns are. And the third and final topic is improving communication and engagement. Susan said that the criticism from fellow creators can be constructive, but any threats or doxing crosses the line, and such behavior is already prohibited by YouTube's policies. Additionally, YouTube plans to meet creators more where they communicate on social media and one-on-one. Also, there's the Known Issues bulletin board in the YouTube Studio beta, which is pretty useful if there's any kind of issues that are well known. They'll put it there. Hey, your downloads won't be there for May 5th. That kind of stuff. Really useful to have that. And finally, they have clarified the community guideline strike system to make it easier to understand and ensure that you're not breaking the rules, but also that there's a course of action to resolve those issues if you do unintentionally break the rules. And now, what can we take from this article or this update from Susan? I think we need to remember as creators on the platform that YouTube has a lot of pressure and a lot of responsibility to limit the distribution of what people are labeling dangerous content. And although I don't personally agree, and I am sure that some of you don't agree with some of the approaches that YouTube has taken, we need to remember that advertisers seem to have a double standard when it comes to advertising on tragic news or controversial topics. When you compare it to YouTube advertising, and traditional media advertising. They don't want to advertise on anything that could be even misconstrued as controversial on YouTube. But if that news story is getting coverage on traditional media, you sure as heck better believe you're going to see those advertisements from the companies who won't put those ads on YouTube. So we need to understand that it's not YouTube trying to be evil here. It is advertisers just having a double standard, and YouTube needs to ensure that these advertisers are happy if they want to stay in business, which we'll talk about in the next story. But also, YouTube has abused this excuse in the past in regards to Brie Larson, where they say this is a breaking news story and they deprioritize the criticism from YouTube content creators and prioritize video results from established news media. But I haven't heard of this happening since the Brie Larson incident, so hopefully we won't see further prioritization of established media over creators. The search results will just be what the top-ranking search results are, rather than what YouTube thinks is appropriate. As far as the creator concerns, there's no real good news regarding the copyright system abuse. We're going to have to wait and see what YouTube does to these people who are abusing the system, which is pretty prevalent, it seems like, but no real resolution there. And it does seem like YouTube won't adjust the entire platform to meet the EU guidelines, but rather they'll introduce upload filters only for creators within the EU, and it will likely be different upload filters and different implementation based on what member state of the EU that creator is residing in. That is it for the YouTube update from Susan Wojcicki. Now let's talk about some sexy earnings calls from Alphabet. The article titles all over the place. We're reading Alphabet attributes $70 billion loss to slow down in YouTube's earnings. Well, that's technically true. But there have been articles claiming that the stock price decrease in Alphabet stems from YouTube's changes to the algorithm. And I listened through the sexy earnings call, the entire hour-long thing. I kind of like listening to this stuff. It's fun listening to what's going on in the background. But here is exactly what their CFO stated in regards to the decreased earnings from YouTube.
Okay, so starting with clicks and CPCs, as we've discussed on prior calls, the biggest driver affecting both CPCs and click trends is YouTube engagement ads, with YouTube clicks representing the vast majority of total clicks. And so while YouTube clicks continued to grow at a substantial pace in the first quarter, the rate of YouTube click growth decelerated versus what was a strong Q1 last year, reflecting changes that we made in early 2018, which we believe are overall additive to the user and advertiser experience.
Now, you're probably wondering, where did she say anything about the algorithm? She didn't. She didn't say anything about that. Of course, you could interpret what she said as adjustments to the algorithm because she stated that the changes made were additive to the user and the advertiser experience. And that is exactly what advertisers were asking for. We want to limit the distribution of this dangerous content. We don't want to have our ads on this dangerous content. It reflects really badly on us. So it's possible that that's exactly what she is saying, that the changes made to the algorithm led to a decrease in ad revenue for YouTube. But what these articles are positing is that the move to de-recommend conspiracy videos and other borderline content is what led to the decrease in revenue. The article from CNBC, which will be linked in the show notes, actually stated all of those garbage videos also kept engagement high. It kept YouTube users tuned in to their feeds beyond the video they came to watch, even if the company said they only made up less than 1% of videos on the site. YouTube was literally incentivized to keep its algorithms pumping junk to the top of people's feeds, so people would keep watching and the ad dollar would keep flowing. I'm sorry, I know that sounded ridiculous, but every single time I read the term literally, I read it as literally, obviously you don't know that. I read it as so condescending. I just hate when people use that. Now I'm going to go ahead and make my own unsubstantiated claim. I don't think that the removal of conspiracy videos, or borderline content had anything to do with the decreased ad rate and decreased cost per click. What I think is maybe YouTube's decreased ad revenue stems from the never-ending stream of hit pieces put out by the established media against YouTube, but YouTube seems determined to protect them. I don't understand the relationship there. It seems as though these established news outlets have a goal to destroy the YouTube platform because advertisers have discovered that it's a much better value to advertise on YouTube as opposed to advertising directly through their ad buying teams. You get a much better rate through YouTube, so why would you go ahead and advertise on CNBC or The Verge? It makes zero sense, and you get much better analytics, and you know exactly what's going on with YouTube, with advertising through Google. So they have a strong motivation to destroy YouTube because they have somewhat of a monopoly or an oligopoly. I suppose there's Facebook and Google. Those are the two advertiser platforms. But look at how many articles there are every single week that seem to be trying to destroy YouTube and Facebook because these companies probably want those ad dollars back because they can earn a heck of a lot more money. But that's my take on it. The pressure from these media companies to ban certain people from the platform has alienated a large number of people, and that could have pushed off certain audience members, creators, or even advertisers to move off of the platform. Or if you want another theory, here you go. Maybe the decreased ad success rate could be caused by the recent change in the advertising approach. What I mean there is in the past, advertisements were made up of here's a product, here's what it does, here's what it costs, buy it. But over the last year or 6 months, we've seen a growing number of ads that say, hey, is this what you think about social issues? That's it. They don't even say buy our product. They just make videos about social issues and then put their branding at the end, and people think that's not an advertisement. That's an advertisement. It's just a terrible advertisement because you didn't tell us why we should buy your product other than this is what we think about social issues. It's such a stupid way to approach advertisements. I don't think that's a successful advertisement. You should say, here's our product, buy it. Here's why you should buy it. Not, hey man, I totally agree with your social stance. What a stupid thing. I hate it. So from my ill-informed position, sure, it could be argued that the algorithm and the changes to the algorithm led to decreased ad revenue and decreased cost per click. But I don't think that the change to the YouTube algorithm is the only contributing factor here. And I think stating that it is quite short-sighted and a little bit ignorant. I think there are many more factors playing into what advertisers play to put their ads on YouTube. You didn't take into account the media's influence on what's going on social media or on YouTube. You didn't take into account the changes in advertising approaches. You didn't take into account the growing number of outraged people who are attacking companies for having ads on certain controversial content. There are many, many, many more factors other than YouTube saying, let's derank some conspiracy videos. That's my take on the entire thing. I think these companies are scared that YouTube and Facebook have so much ad dollars in them and they can't sell their own ads. And we are seeing that in the growing number of layoffs in new media news coverage. Vice. What's the other one? Other ones. There's a bunch of them that laid off a bunch of people. BuzzFeed, that's one. And then whoever owns The Verge, Vox, all of them going through very difficult financial times. So you can see they have motivation to remove faith in YouTube as a good advertising platform to try to draw advertisers back to them. That's my conspiratorial take on it. Maybe I'll get deranked and ruin YouTube's ad revenue. Ooh, how scary. Bunch of frickin' dopes. Okay, next news story. Facebook banned a whole bunch of people. Now, just like the Alex Jones story a couple of weeks ago, I am going to try to approach this as apolitically as possible, but if you don't want to hear any political talk, feel free to skip past this. I don't blame you. I don't like politics either. No hard feelings. Again, the timestamps are in the show notes. 2 weeks ago, or a week and a half ago, Facebook banned a bunch of users under embargo. What does that mean? Facebook provided a press release to a bunch of different news outlets and said you cannot release this information until this time. Then, when the time hit, a bunch of news agencies dropped the story that a lot of people had been banned. What that makes me think of this is it was a coordinated effort to boost the feeling or boost the reputation or just provide good press about Facebook. That's what it seems to be. In the statement that Facebook provided to these news outlets, they said, "We've always banned individuals or organizations that promote or engage in violence and hate, regardless of the ideology or ideology. The process for evaluating potential violators is extensive, and it is what led us to our decision to remove these accounts today." As far as the accounts that were banned from both Facebook and Instagram, they were Louis Farrakhan, Alex Jones, Paul Nealon, Milo Yiannopoulos, Paul Joseph Watson, Laura Loomer, and InfoWars. And the reasoning that Facebook gave was that these people violated its policy against dangerous individuals and organizations. And of course, let me go ahead and read you that policy right now. In an effort to prevent and disrupt real-world harm, we do not allow any organizations or individuals that proclaim a violent mission or are engaged in violence from having a presence on Facebook. This includes organizations or individuals involved in the following: terrorist activity, organized hate, mass or serial murder, human trafficking, organized violence, or criminal activity. We also remove content that expresses support or praise for groups, leaders, or individuals involved in these activities. And that last sentence of the policy is really what concerns me here. If Facebook has labeled these people as dangerous persons, and their policy says we also remove content that expresses support or praise for groups, leaders, or individuals involved in these activities, does that not mean that if I were to start posting positively about Alex Jones or Paul Joseph Watson, that my posts would be removed and that I would potentially be banned as a dangerous person myself? Or what about Snoop Dogg? Because when this came out, Snoop Dogg went onto his Facebook page, which has 33 million fans, and said, I'm going to post Louis Farrakhan videos as much as possible, and all of you who follow me, you should do the same. Would that not be Snoop Dogg directly supporting a dangerous person, a hate leader? So shouldn't Snoop Dogg be banned? I'm not saying I want him banned, but based on this policy, certainly seems like he should be. And anybody who says anything good about Alex Jones, Paul Joseph Watson, or anything, they should all be banned. Pretty crazy that even saying something nice or in support of a dangerous person in Facebook's eyes, not even in legal terms. It's just if Facebook thinks you're a dangerous person, you can't post any support about them. That seems a bit dangerous. In an article from Bloomberg, they stated that Facebook is often chided for failing to stop the spread of harmful speech and misinformation on its platform, and Thursday's ban shows the company is taking a firmer hand in enforcing its own service terms. Even so, the moves are bound to draw criticism from media and politicians on the far right. Here, I think the last word in this statement is a bit of a problem. By saying it's going to be criticized by groups on the far right, that implies that if you have a problem with this banning, that you are far right. I don't like that. I don't like that implication. Now, I understand that Bloomberg didn't say only far-right people will criticize this, but I don't think in the current climate that many people would be willing to find out your political ideology to determine where you stand. They would just think, well, Bloomberg says people who criticize this banning are far right. You're criticizing this banning, therefore you are far right. Well, Bloomberg, let me go ahead and enlighten you a little bit. I am criticizing this banning. I don't like this banning, and I'm not far right. I can tell you that. I am not far right. And you may be thinking, well, Bandrew, you're analyzing just a word here and a word here. It's just 2 words. It doesn't really matter. Well, according to Bloomberg, I'm far right, so I'm unreasonable. Let me be unreasonable for a second. Jesus, this is getting ridiculous. Let's go ahead and look at another article because I could go on this for hours. The Verge. The Verge included some points that Facebook provided for why these individual accounts were actually banned. Alex Jones was in videos with Gavin McInnes in December and February, and Facebook has designated McInnes as a hate figure. Yiannopoulos praised McInnes and Tommy Robinson, who Facebook has designated as a hate figure. Laura Loomer appears with McInnes in December and declared her support for far-right activist Faith Goldy, who had been banned after posting racist videos on her account. Based on these points, it really does seem like if you're in a video with someone who Facebook has classified as a hate figure, then you can get banned. You know what that means? Joe Rogan needs to go. He had Gavin McInnes and Alex Jones and Milo Yiannopoulos on his podcast. He is supporting these hate figures. He needs to be deleted off of Facebook, banned from YouTube and everything. If you can't tell, I'm being a bit facetious. I think that is a bit ridiculous. If you are seen in a video with somebody who Facebook thinks is a hate figure, you're gone. Now, that's not the end of the story because it gets a little bit more ridiculous, a bit funny, and also disturbing. Facebook said in part of their statement that they always ban this type of content. But the AP released an article showing that Facebook not only did not ban terrorism supporters or terrorists themselves, but they left up execution videos and images of severed heads, among other awful images. But here's where it gets a little bit funny and kind of disturbing. Have you seen one of those videos that Facebook auto-generates for the year in review where they have that cheery ukulele music playing in the background? It sounds like some stock Final Cut Pro video editing thing. It's just awful music. But it's, hey, thanks for being here over the last year. We appreciate you. And they show you a bunch of pictures and posts that you did over the last year. Well, being that Facebook didn't always remove all of the content like they said they did, they auto-generated these happy videos, thanks for being here videos, with this terrorist imagery that had not been taken down. So at that point, Facebook had actually generated videos that were promoting terrorist ideas. Do you see the hypocrisy in the issue here? Now, I'm not saying that Facebook is a bad guy here. I think it's kind of ridiculous to expect them to be able to take down everything. That's almost probably an impossibility to catch every little thing. I just think it's a bit funny that they are so strongly against these hate figures, yet they auto-generate these happy videos with underlying happy music with awful terrorist imagery and terrorist ideas. How ridiculous is that? So I honestly don't know how to end the story. I will talk about how we should interpret this as creators, but I will point out the thing that's most concerning about all of this deplatforming and, dare I say, censorship. I know even including that will get me hate, but I think it's bordering on censorship. But the thing that bothers me the most about this is how many journalists seem to be okay with the banning and the deplatforming of controversial figures. And they're not just okay with it. It seems like a lot of them are actually advocating for it and cheering them on. Yeah, get rid of these people that we don't like. I thought journalism was all about free speech. Apparently not. And there's another thing that's going to piss people off, me saying free speech. Enough of this controversial stuff. As a creator, what does this mean? I don't know if there's anything that we can really do here. We rely on these platforms to stay in touch with our audiences and distribute our content to them. Currently, there's no regulations in place for these social media platforms to protect free speech because it's not the government limiting the speech on the platform. You may think that this is a slippery slope argument, but unless some protections are put in place, I think you have just a couple of options. You could either be very PC on these platforms and hope that what you say today is not interpreted as insensitive in a few years, at which point you will be banned for being a hateful person and pushing out hateful rhetoric, even though at the time you posted it, it wasn't hateful. You could be un-PC and just push back against all the censorship and all the deplatforming, just say as much controversial and hateful stuff as possible. I don't recommend doing that. That's a stupid idea. And if you have hateful ideas, well, you're stupid enough to do it, so maybe you will do that. Then the other one, my personal take, is just ignore all of it and avoid any and all controversial discussions, at least on social media platforms. I understand that I am kind of breaking that in the podcast over the last couple of weeks, but I feel like it's important to kind of discuss these. Now, it's time for broken record time. With all of this deplatforming going on, if you are a content creator and you want to continue to be a content creator, regardless of what happens on these social media platforms, get your own hub on the internet. Get a domain, get a website, and direct people to those websites in case these platforms disappear or in case what you say is determined to be hateful in a couple of years and everything that you do is deleted. That's my take on it. Best of luck to you. Scary times we got over here. That is actually it for the news. Let's talk about one new product. And I'm not going to show any pictures of it. I'm going to talk about it briefly. It's from Apogee. It's the Apogee NiteMic, N-I-T-E. It's the same form factor as their Mic 96K and their Mic Plus, but it's a gaming microphone. I looked at it. I don't know what makes it a gaming microphone other than the fact that half of the name of the mic is taken from Fortnite. It's the NiteMic, like the Fortnite mic. But nothing really makes it seem like a gaming microphone other than they bundled a limited number of these with the Odyssey Mobius gaming headset. That's it. Let's jump to what you had to say. The only comment we're looking at today is another controversial one. What a controversial episode this week, Bandrew. You're going to get banned. Comes from Matt. He says, I really like that new microphone. Sounds a lot more lively than. Don't know what it's more lively than, but thank you. Got a question. I'll try to keep it non-political. Good luck. I'm all for free speech. I believe people have the right to say whatever they want. It encourages discussion and criticism to help educate people. If Twitter is going around trying to silence people who they feel are problematic, how are people going to see the more toxic opinions and criticize them publicly? It would make people more likely to not be aware of what's right and wrong, and end up believing everything they read more often. Thus, we'll have more indoctrination and more radicalized people going out committing horrific acts of violence. My question, do you believe there can be some form of balance, or do you think it's impossible in this current climate? Thanks, Bandrew. He wasn't signing it, Bandrew. He was just saying, hey, thanks, Bandrew. Well, thank you, Matt. But also, curse you for sending in such a difficult and loaded question. What a jerk. Regardless of me cursing you, Matt, great question. To be fair, I don't think Twitter is the only company going around trying to silence people that they think are problematic. I think all social media companies are feeling pressure to do so. And on that note, I don't think these social media companies would want to ban these people if they weren't getting external pressure from users who are probably a vocal minority, or if they weren't getting pushback from shareholders or ad companies either, because they're getting attacked on all sides. I think that's why they're really trying to deplatform or silence people that they think are problematic. And I do agree with your point, 100%. I would prefer to know what kind of terrible belief someone has as opposed to being led to believe that those people or those beliefs don't exist. I want those opinions out in the open so I can say, oh, hey, Johnny, he's a huge I would love to be able to do that rather than say, well, everything's peachy, everything's great, nothing's wrong, nobody hates anybody. That's why I prefer for it to be out in the open, because then we know who really sucks and who holds despicable beliefs. But also, if someone is accused of holding a certain set of beliefs, I would like to be able to go myself to their feed and see evidence of them holding those beliefs. Currently, when someone gets deplatformed, all of their posts become deleted. They get deleted, so it becomes close to impossible to find any evidence of their bad behavior. We end up just having to take news media's word for it, other people's words for it, and I am not keen to do so. I'm kind of like a math teacher with the news, with the accusations. Show me your work. Show me your actual work. Show me step 1, step 2, step 3. How do we know this person is a hate figure? And show it to me in context. I'm the math teacher for the news and the accusations. But now to your question. Do I think there can be some form of balance? Yes And I'm saying that because I truly do want to believe that we can come to some form of balance. Now, I'm a bit reluctant to say this, but government intervention or government regulation might, just might, be a possible solution to this problem. But before saying that it would be a solution, I would need to see what type of proposed regulation there would be on this. For instance, how would they be defining harassment or calls to violence? And I say that because I think there's a very big difference between online harassment and in-person harassment. Or at least there's a lot of nuance. For instance, if you have a following of 500,000 people and you say, I think Papa John's sucks, it's the worst place ever, they sent me a pizza, it was the wrong pizza, it was cold, they're the worst. That will likely lead to a small percentage of your audience going and harassing Papa John's. But a small percentage of 500,000 people is still a lot of people. So you directly led to the harassment of a company. Or if you criticize an actor or a politician and you have a large audience, a portion of your audience will go harass that person. Would that be harassment? Would that be inciting harassment? Would you be charged for that? That's the nuance that I want to get into that I think would be essential for them to flush out in any type of regulation. Because I don't think it's as simple as that was harassment, that wasn't harassment. Would you be responsible for your audience? On that note, we've seen this online a lot. People may not be calling directly for acts of violence, but a crazy person in your audience could misinterpret what you're saying and use that as justification for their actions. And then that original poster who didn't actually call for an act of violence is criticized for it and dragged through the coals. Is that a saying? Dragged through the dirt? Dragged through the mud? I don't know. But we've also seen this in the real world, not just online. Just see Marilyn Manson or NWA or violent video games even. Those always get blamed for people being insane people and causing damage to other human beings. Being violent, being hateful. Well, blame Marilyn Manson, blame rap music, blame violent video games and violent movies. No, it's not the movies. It's not the media. It's not the stuff that they're consuming. It's the fact that they're crazy. So I'm a bit reluctant to say that government regulation would be a perfect solution because it wouldn't. The government never rolls out a perfect solution to almost anything, but it might be a potential solution to the deplatforming of non-PC people. I also think that there's currently a big issue with civil discussions with individuals as well. I do think it's a bit blown out of proportion though, in all honesty, but I still think it does exist. When having conversations with people one-on-one about controversial topics, I don't ever recall having that conversation devolve into a screaming match. I don't recall that ever happening. But I do see that online all the time, and you see that at these protests where people will scream at each other without having an understanding of each other. I think that in order to resolve this, both sides of the aisle need to enter into discussions with each other in good faith. You can't go in saying, I know this guy's a racist, I hate everything he chooses to be, because that's not going to accomplish anything. If someone says, I think we need to discuss illegal immigration, if you were to scream at them, you're a racist, nothing's going to get accomplished. But conversely, if someone says, I think socialism is good, and that's the direction this country should go, you know what has never changed their mind? Being told that they're an idiot and a freeloader. That doesn't accomplish anything. So I think that type of rhetoric is damaging to the health of conversations. I think people need to stop assuming they know the motivations behind someone's political stance or belief system for that matter, and discuss it with them. Find out why they hold a certain set of beliefs. What is their understanding of that belief system, of that political movement? Why do they think that way? I have said this before, and I will say it 1,000,000 times. No one's mind has ever been changed by being screamed at. But through having respectful conversations, minds can be changed, and they have been changed by being civil with one another. Things can change. So don't be a douchebag. Don't scream at people when you don't actually know them. Discuss with them, hey, why do you think that? Is it just what you've been told to think? Or do you actually think that? Why do you think that? Discuss it with them. That's what's so interesting about life. You can interact with other people and find out how they think differently than you. How neat is that? That's my take on this whole thing. It's not as in-depth as it could have been, but I think people on all political sides need to stop being so dismissive of opposing points of views and discuss them. I'll wrap it up there. Let's jump to my favorite part of the show, the Ask Bandrew segment. All right. If you guys got any questions, go ahead and send them to askbandrew@gmail.com, and I will likely answer them on an upcoming episode of the podcast. Don't forget, if you hate listening to me read, you can send in an audio question. You can send in a video question. I would love to get those, and all the other listeners would love to get those because they don't have to listen to me read for that short time. First email comes from the Sixth Impact. He says, "Hey, Bandrew, been watching for a couple of years, and I have seen you review a lot of different things. However, something that I haven't seen you talk about at all is speakers, particularly bookshelf speakers. So I guess my question is whether or not you're even interested in exploring that type of audio gear, because I know I would watch." Sixth Impact. Thank you very much for the email. This is something I would be very, 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 very interested in checking out, but I simply don't have the space to do it. Speakers are a lot larger than microphones. And I don't know if you can see in the video, but I am running out of space for stuff. So bookshelf speakers, probably not something that I could feasibly review right now, maybe in the future. There's also another serious issue though. Cheryl. I don't think Cheryl would like me blasting speakers to see how they perform at loud volume, seeing where they break up, how much headroom they have, or any of that. So I think there's a lot of limitations that would keep me from doing it. So as much as I'm interested in reviewing speakers, monitors, all of that, I don't think I can do it right now. But currently, if you're interested, on my stereo setup, I have a pair of ELAC B6s, I think they are, and they're wonderful. They are amazing for the price. I got them on sale. They were $300 for a pair for the longest time. And then randomly I saw them drop to $150 for a pair. I don't think I've clicked buy now faster because I had those in my wish list for a couple of years. And finally I picked them up and my God, they are so good. ELAC B6s, amazing. And the second email comes from Herman. Dear podcast, it's Podcastage. And I'm Bandrew. This is the Bandrew Says podcast. Thank you for sending it in, though. Currently, I am using the Boya PVM-1000L shotgun microphone, Behringer 302 USB mixer, and Audacity. I want to produce a better sound for my videos. My questions are, why is my voice level so low? If I increase the gain level, it will be too many hiss. How can I decrease hiss sound on air situation? Should I use a preamp to remove this hiss? I watched a review about Tascam 60DR Mark II field recorder. Can I remove the hiss sound and boost my volume sound? Thanks for your answer. Herman, thank you for the email. Let's look at this. I pulled the specs for the Boya whatever shotgun microphone, and I'll throw them up on screen here. I don't know what the different sensitivities are here. I had Alan from SoundSpeeds look at them. He thinks the sensitivity is negative 33 dB. I think it's negative 56. I don't know which one it is. Here's my initial thought. If you are running the Boya into the Xenix 302 USB and you're powering it from the 302 USB, I think that is likely your problem. The spec sheet says it requires 48 volts of phantom power or a AA battery. So if you are not using the battery and you're powering it from phantom power, the 302 USB, if I remember correctly, only offers 15 volts of phantom power. So your microphone is going to be underpowered. It's not going to be getting the full amplification from the preamp type thing in the condenser. It's not going to be getting everything that it needs. Meaning you're going to have to turn up the gain more and it's going to be a degraded audio signal. I think that's probably where your issue is stemming from, but you didn't include what your settings currently are. You didn't include how you're connecting it. You left out a lot of information about what's going on with your setup. So that's my speculation. I also think that you need to look into proper gain staging because with that mixer, it's a little bit confusing with the gain dial and the mic dial. The mic dial is similar to a fader. I believe straight up and down on the mic dial is where it's unity gain, meaning you're not boosting and you're not cutting the signal. So while you're setting your gain, have that set straight up and down, set the gain to as loud as it needs to be, and then you can adjust in post. You could adjust the fader after that, but set the gain first to ensure you're getting the hottest signal and the best signal to noise ratio as early in the signal as possible. As far as removing the noise, if you're live streaming, I don't know of any dynamic hiss removing, noise removal software that works on the fly. I don't know of any. You could just use a noise gate, but then when you talk, it's going to come through. If you're doing it in post, there's plenty of noise removal programs. Just look up noise removal plugin Audacity. There's plenty of them there, and they're free. That's it for the news, the Ask Bandrew, and what you had to say. Let's talk about personal stuff really quick. Sorry about missing last week. Something came up. I knew that I was covering some heavy topics, and I didn't want to half-ass it. I really wanted to be able to commit as much time as possible to the episode because there's some very controversial ideas here or controversial news stories here, and I didn't want to just throw them away. I wanted to really spend time doing proper research on them. Then, this is really personal, I changed the setup here. What I did is I moved down to a single monitor setup. I previously had my iMac over here and a second monitor here. The second monitor is where I would have my show notes, everything like that, and I would also have it connected to my Windows PC. Don't have a solution for the Windows PC, but now I have my rack from Nice Racks. I have my iMac on top of it, and I did this for a couple of reasons. First, something that's been bothering me for a while, the amount of reflections off the monitors. I think that when I'm doing the polar pattern test on microphones, when I am testing 180 degrees, the front of the microphone is pointed directly at a monitor, meaning it's just picking up the reflections off the monitor. You're probably hearing a lot more noise than you should in those situations. So I don't think that I was being perfectly fair in that test in my review. So I moved down to a single monitor setup here. And secondly, I want to get actual decent studio monitors for the room. I haven't had them in this room because I wanted to have two monitors, actual screens to see all the information, but I am forcing myself down to a single monitor setup, and gosh darn dang it, it is difficult. It may have been weird for the podcast seeing me constantly look over, and it makes it a lot more apparent when I'm looking at my notes because it's not just directly underneath. I just can't look down. I got to look over too. Kind of sucks. I have a solution for that. It just wasn't here in time to record. That's it for that piece of personal news. And the last piece of personal news is 100,000 subscribers. I got a package from YouTube, from Google, and I'm sure that many of you know what it is. The video that I made about this already went live on Podcastage because today, which is May 12th, is my 4-year anniversary, and I just got this in time to do a video for it. What this box contains is something I never thought that I would get. It is my silver play button from YouTube. It says, presented to Podcastage for passing 100,000 subscribers. I legitimately can't believe that I have this. This is absolutely insane, and I am beyond grateful that 100,000 people have said, yeah, I don't hate him enough to not click subscribe. That's how I interpret it, but I seriously am grateful for everybody who has subscribed and watched a video and left a like and left a dislike and left a comment and helped me improve over the years. Because of those people, because of all of you, I am able to continue to make videos that I really enjoy making, screaming about microphones, playing guitar, writing stupid, moronic, idiotic songs about, hey, Tim, I hope you like this microphone. Hey, I really like pizza, but it's gonna kill me. Songs like that. It's because of you that I get to do that. So thank you so much. Thanks for watching the podcast. Thanks for listening to the podcast. I appreciate each and every one of you. Again, if you got any questions, go ahead and send them to askbandrew@gmail.com, and I will talk to you next week. See you later. Goodbye.
This has been a Geeks Rising production. Your executive producer of Bandrew Scott. For more information, head over to www.geeksrising.com.